Good morning, dear hearts. We are beginning our 12th special relevant central thought today. What is the ego? And the ego, as many of you know, has many, many acronyms that speak to it. By the way, please subscribe. That speak to it. Probably the most well-known one, or at least the one that I first heard, was edging God out, EGO. Since then, I've added earth guides only because that's what the ego does. It only guides us in this realm that it believes that it rules, that it believes is true. And it's everything that is dealing in form. And then one that I added a couple of years ago, edging goodness out, because that's what the ego does. It tells us that this is a world that is filled with fear and hostility, and it basically is taking away everything that is good in this world, anything that we can find that is uplifting or promising that there is something else. The ego wants to eradicate all of that. So it is constantly edging out the goodness here, edging goodness out, ego. The ego is idolatry, the sign of limited and separated self, a limited self, a self that believes it is apart from everyone and everything. It is born in a body, we are not bodies, doomed to suffer and to end its life in death. That is the whole beginning, middle, and end of the ego thought system. It is the will, in air quotes, that sees the will of God as enemy. It's a will separate from, different from the will of God. And then that will takes a form in which it is denied, that it denies the will of God in every way. The ego is proof, again, in air quotes, that strength is weak and love is fearful, life is really death, and what opposes God alone is true. We have a wandering buster. What opposes God alone is true. And of course, there is nothing that opposes God because God is all-encompassing, as is God's love, as is God's truth, as is everything that came from creation. It has no opposite. It has no opposition in truth. The next line says the ego is insane. So for the moment, I want to go way back to our fourth relevant thought, which is what is sin? And that begins with sin is insanity. Sin and the ego will always be found together because it is only through the ego mind that we even believe that sin is possible, that sin could be real. In truth, there is no sin. The Son of God is free. The child of God is free. So there is no sin. Sin is a mistake. It is an error. The ego is insane and it believes in errors, but it elevates them. It elevates those errors to a level of where forgiveness is required and yet forgiveness would never be granted. The ego is actually the decision that we make in that will, that separate will, to not know. We have decided to not know the truth. We do not know the will of God when we are in the ego mind. The ego is insane. In fear, it stands beyond the everywhere. That's capitalized. Apart from all, also capitalized. So it is a standing away from all that is and everything that is true. In separation from the infinite, also capitalized. It's beautiful how this is laid out for us, that the ego is absolutely, has separated itself from everything that could ever be known as real and true and loving and kind. In its insanity, in the ego's insanity, it thinks it's become victor over God himself. The ego is the one that started the rumor that God is dead. And in its, don't get back to me, Nietzsche fans, and in its terrible autonomy, it sees, in air quotes, the will of God has been destroyed. It dreams, the ego dreams of punishment and trembles at the figures in its dreams, as these dreams are really nightmares. Its enemies who seek to murder it before it can ensure its safety by attacking them, by attacking first. The ego speaks first, it speaks loudest, it attacks first. Remember the mantra of the ego, which I haven't mentioned recently, unless you go back to previous years of this lesson, that the ego's mantra is seek, but do not find. You will never find. I don't want you to find. I want to stay in control. I want to edge out all the goodness that there could ever be here for you to discover. The lesson for today, 331, is there is no conflict, for my will is yours. I am not dealing with a separate will, the will from the ego. I am not believing in idolatry and insanity and in fear. And I refuse to accept those things. I realize that my will, what I will for myself is exactly, what I desire for myself is exactly what my Father wills for me. So how foolish, Father, to believe that your son, your child, could cause himself to suffer. Could he make a plan for his damnation and be left without a certain way to his release? You love me, Father. That's a beautiful little sentence, and one that we can remember when things don't seem to be as we would like them to be, when things seem to be amiss. Do not doubt your Father's love for you. You love me, Father. You could never leave me desolate. You could never leave me to die within a world of pain and cruelty, because you are not a cruel creator. You are not a cruel parent. You are loving and kind. And how could I think that love has left itself? God being love is also what I am. But God being love means that love and God are one. So love cannot leave God, and God cannot leave love, because they are the same. There is no will except the will of love. God is love. There is no will but that. And the will of love, the will of God, is for our complete and joyful happiness. I share in God's will for me. As we talked about yesterday, I believe, and it was, God's will for me is perfect happiness, and I share in God's will for me. Fear is a dream and has no will that can conflict with yours. Conflict is sleep, and peace, awakening. Death is illusion, life, eternal truth. There is no opposition to your will. There cannot be an opposition to anything that is all-encompassing. There is no conflict, for my will is yours. They cannot be apart. They cannot be separate. They cannot be different, because we are one with our Creator. We are the extension of our Creator. We too are creation. As we just finished that relevant thought. Forgiveness, this is the second part of the lesson. It is the text-like portion. Forgiveness shows us that God's will is one and that we share it. Forgiveness is the key to happiness, to go back to a lesson from a while ago. And then the follow-up lesson, the next lesson to that, was forgiveness offers everything I want. And in that lesson, it says, do you want this? Forgiveness offers. Do you want that? Forgiveness offers it. Everything that we want, we desire, forgiveness offers it. And that is why God's will offers it to us as well, because forgiveness shows us that God's will is one. Let us look upon the holy sites forgiveness shows today, that we may find the peace of God. Amen. It's the text portion, but it ends as a prayer. Amen. This is all I want. This is everything I need. Conflict comes from opposing viewpoints or thoughts and beliefs, and there is no conflict between my will and God's. They are the same. So there is no conflict, because my will is yours. And I think if we can accept that this one thought, that if we can accept this one thought, and we can get really comfortable and familiar with that. And then the hesitation and the opposition to believing that there is a conflict will be diminished. We'll be able to relax and trust that we are here for purpose and for reason. And that purpose and that reason is truly to know ourselves and to come home. That's it. Know who we are. Know that we are the sinless, guiltless, blessed, perfect children of God, and that we are loved beyond measure. You love me, Father. You could never leave me desolate or comfortless or to die within a cruel world. And that's it for today. I hope it helped. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please smile. Please take in a deep breath and let all conflict that might be still within. And, you know, these conflicts can visit us at any time because we're still walking around in this world. And this is a world of conflict, but we can see it differently and experience it differently. Just need to be vigilant for it. So breathe, release, smile, pray. Please be here tomorrow. Namaste.